Morning
Good morning.
Good morning.
and welcome to Sunday SoulDay, fuel for your mind, body, and soul. Today we have a special guest, Erin Dobratz, a retired Olympic synchronized swimmer who clinched the bronze medal at the 2004 Summer Olympics in Athens, Greece. Her journey into synchronized swimming began at the age of 9, and by her late teens, she was already competing at the international level. Erin's dedication led her to the ultimate sporting event, where she experienced the dreamlike atmosphere of the Olympics, from the opening ceremony to the award stand and more. Today, Erin is an entrepreneur diving into the digital asset technology space, drawing on the determination she honed in her athletic career. Join us as we explore her incredible journey from synchronized swimming to the Olympics and her exciting new ventures in the tech world. Beyond her work, Erin cherishes moments with family and friends, enjoys nature, cooking, and a good book. Welcome, Erin.
Thanks, Sally. Happy to be here.
So I want to start with can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into synchronized swimming, and what is it about you and your personality that made you a good fit for this sport?
Sure. As you said already, I started at 9, and how I learned about synchronized swimming was the school I was going to sent home a flyer about a local club team, which was the Walnut Creek Aquanuts. And I went home and I asked my mom what synchronized swimming was, because I had never heard of it before, and got a sort of inaccurate representation, which was ballet in the water, which to a 9-year-old sounds fantastic. So I said, I want to try it. I went and did the tryouts, and they just basically made sure I could swim across the pool. And they taught me everything I knew, and the rest was really history. And to answer the second part of the question, the creativity, I think, was the thing that got me hooked. That was a way I could express myself in the water. And then the things that helped me succeed really were the discipline, the drive, and those skills and personality traits that I think every sport really requires.
Yeah, that's funny. So it's really not just ballet in the water.
It's much, much more. I'm holding your breath and doing a lot more physical activity.
Yeah. So thank you. Can you share your synchronized swimming progression from getting started to being part of the junior national team, your college experience with synchro, and then being part of the Olympic team?
Yeah, so I followed a pretty traditional progression. I did age group competitions starting at 9 all the way until I was 13. And then I was lucky enough to qualify for the junior national team, where I got to compete in Russia for the Junior World Championships, which was an incredible experience at such a young age and such an exotic foreign location. From there, I was part of the junior national team for the next, let's see, let me do math in my hand. I don't know, 4 or 5 years until I graduated high school, at which time I actually was selected to do the Olympic qualifier in the year 2000, which was really more of a practice run. I think that the teams are more or less selected, give or take a few girls at that point, but it was a good experience for me to do at that age. Then from there, qualified for the national team 2, which is sort of like the B team, for 1 year, and then qualified for national team 1 all the way up until the Olympics. And somewhere in there found time to go to Stanford and compete on the team there as well.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that journey.
Sure.
Hi, Erin.
Hi, Nisha.
So I am so excited to chat with you and just learn so much more about you. But can you share your experience competing in the Olympic Games in Athens and kind of take us through a memorable moment of that journey? I actually, before you answer, had the privilege of attending the Olympics in Sydney. And it was just a phenomenal experience for me as a spectator. So I can only imagine you as an athlete, like what that was like. Would love to hear all about it.
Sure. Well, as you know, as a spectator, the energy at the Olympics is palpable. It's unlike any other athletic event. And part of what makes it special is that it only occurs every 4 years. So it's not your regular international meet that you go to every year, or even world championships, which occurs every other year. It's the pinnacle of all sporting events. And that was exactly what our coach was trying to get us to not think about in the training in the years up to it. So her mindset was, let's treat it like any other international competition, so we don't have the mistakes and the big mental blocks going into it. So in that regard, it was just like any other competition. But then once you get into Athens and you go to the opening ceremonies and you're around all the other athletes, you really start to feel the magic, and you start to envision and visualize what it could be like if you end up meeting your goal and ending up on the podium. So for me, probably, I mean, I have several key memorable moments from the Olympics, but walking into the stadium during opening ceremonies just sent a chill down my spine and goosebumps on my arms, which I'm getting right now just talking about it. Just the energy of hearing the Greek crowd cheer on their home team, even if it wasn't for us, it just makes you realize how special it is. And, just being around all the other athletes in the village, going to the cafeteria and seeing people from other sports. So in the world championships, it's just aquatic sports. It's just water polo, swimming, synchronized swimming, and diving. So before the Olympics, I had never been in a competition with other athletes from other sports. It had always just been water sports. So it was really neat to see older people, younger people, weightlifters, shooters, people from sports that I had never had any exposure to, from all different countries, speaking all different languages, all in one place, going after the same goal. It's hard to even really describe what it feels like. And then to be riding around on the village shuttle with Michael Phelps after he wins a medal, and just these surreal moments that even I look back on, even winning a medal, I look back on thinking, wow, I can't believe I got to experience that. And of course, the most magical moment for me was actually the medal ceremony and having that medal go around my neck. But a lot of it was a blur, but those few things I can really look back on and cherish.
I can not even imagine, especially like riding with Michael Phelps and all of his winnings and everything. Like, how amazing is that? And you're so right. Like that moment, even as a spectator, seeing all the different countries come in and all the athletes from all different sports, it was, I had never seen anything like that, like not even close. And it was such an experience, even as a spectator, that I just can never forget. Like when you were even describing it, I started getting chills, and closing ceremonies, same, it was just so beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing. Being an athlete comes with tremendous sacrifice. I'm a former athlete. I ran track and field, not at the Olympic level, but I ran track and field in college. And Ali, as you know, competed as well, as an incredible athlete. But can you share some sacrifices that you made that maybe made you feel left out, or if you're looking back, like maybe you weren't even aware that they were sacrifices at the time?
Of course, yeah, and Ali and I were actually talking about that before doing this podcast and reminiscing about the times we spent together that she thought they were abnormal, but to me they just seemed like, well, yeah, that's what you do, right? And she would tell me, no, that's not what normal people do. So, looking back, I thought I had a pretty good balance of my personal life and swimming life, but I realized that I just missed out on a lot of the everyday things, the weekend hangouts or the after school get-togethers. And I was lucky enough that the way the synchro schedule worked, I didn't miss any major dances or homecomings or anything like that. No graduation. I was there for all the key moments, but it was the little things that I look back on that I kind of missed. And one of Ali's favorite stories is she was over for a sleepover one day, and she might be getting to this next, so sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, but I set my alarm for 3 or 4 a.m. to get up and do the homework the next day because I had been at training and I was just way too tired. And that was a regular occurrence for me, but for her, she thought it was so strange that someone would be getting up that early in the morning to get their homework done. But I just found a way to fit everything in that I wanted to do. And to me, it wasn't abnormal at all. Another funny story, when I went to college, I had morning practices and then again in the afternoon. And for morning practices, I would ride my bike through the quad to get to the pool at 5 a.m. And several times I would pass people coming home from parties while I was getting up to go swim for the day. And it hits you at that time, really the sacrifices you're making and the things you're missing out on. But I got lucky in that I met my goal. I mean, I think it would be a lot different and a lot harder to be looking back and saying I sacrificed and missed all those things if I hadn't, but it still built all the character and made me who I am today. So it was well worth it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I can absolutely relate. I, unlike you, missed a lot of those moments, like the dance. I missed my my high school graduation because I was competing at state. And I remember my dad yelling from the stands, "They just called your name," across the stage because someone called him. So I missed a lot of those moments, but it didn't feel like sacrifices at the time. They just felt like that's what you needed to do in order to get, to the goals that you were setting. So I completely understand.
Exactly. And I mean, I guess one other thing that I did miss is I took my senior year off college to train for and compete in the Olympics. So when I got back, all my friends had already graduated. And that was a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow because I was going to school and I finally had the opportunity to be a normal person and go out and party, and everyone was gone.
Everyone's gone. Oh my goodness.
The bright side, I guess, and the silver lining is that I was able to take a full course load and graduate faster, but that was...
And make it to the Olympics, I don't know.
Oh. Erin, I got so excited doing the intro that I forgot to even share that we are longtime childhood friends, and you touched on that, so thank you. Yeah, I introduced Erin at the Hall of Fame for our high school, and so I had time even then to just reflect on the sacrifices that she made. And again, when I brought them up to her, she was just like, that was normal. This was normal to me. I'm like, I need my sleep. How are you, studying for an exam and getting an A on it, waking up at 3:00 in the morning and then going to practice. Like, it was incredible. And you were such an inspiration for me when I went on to play college water polo. I'm like, Erin has taught me time management, like in such a way, like I just so looked up to you when I went on to have to be in that space of time management. And you're right. It does on some level feel like sacrifice, but you are gaining so much, like time with teammates and getting to see lots of different places. So yeah, just so great. So in water polo, we are not allowed to touch the ground. And as a sprinter in track and field, Demisha did track and field for UCLA. If you step out of your lane, you are disqualified. Can you tell us some of the rules, requirements, and expectations about synchro that viewers may not know?
Of course. Definitely don't drown because you'll get disqualified. No, there's not really anything you would get disqualified for, except for in the technical routine, there are required elements that you need in your routine, but you have plenty of time to plan for that in advance. So there wouldn't really be a circumstance that a team wouldn't have every single required technical element. So you would just have a reduced score if you weren't synchronized or if you didn't do things the right way. But disqualification is rare. There are a lot of weird things about synchronized swimming. So there's 8 girls that swim at once in the team event. There's also a duet event, which is 2 people. We actually listen to the music underwater, which a lot of people are surprised to hear. And that's how we stay synchronized when our legs are up in the air. And actually you can hear the music a little bit better underwater because of the way it travels. We wear nose clips to keep the water out of our nose, no goggles during competitions, but we wear them during practice, and then wear Knox gelatin in our hair and wear it up in a bun with makeup, which people think is silly, but it actually helps amplify our facial expressions because in synchronized swimming, there are 2 scores you receive, the technical merit and the artistic impression. And the artistic impression is based on how you emote feelings and energy and how that relates to the actual routine. So there's a lot that goes into it that people don't quite understand. Touching the bottom, like in water polo, obviously you can't touch the bottom. That will get you disqualified. But it actually is harder if there's a shallow pool. We've had to swim in all sorts of different pools over the years. And if there is a bottom, you actually end up hitting it when you're doing egg beater. So it's more of a hazard than anything.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all that. And then I remember playing around with you in the water, and you would do like counting, like, like what is that all about?
Yeah, so the routine is based on the music, but it's also usually based on 8 counts of that music. So each movement you make is in accordance to those counts. So you would have, I mean, I don't want to even do it right now because it's been so long since I've done a routine, but like 1, 2, 3, 4, and you would all move your hands in the same way, or legs in the same way, or bodies in the same way at that same time, and in accordance with each other. So it's a lot of memorization, music, coordination, and things like that.
Yeah, thank you.
I did not know that they played the music underwater. I was really trying to figure that out because we could also hear the music in the stands. And so I was like, how can they hear the music when they go under? So I didn't even think of that. That's so awesome. Well,
it's all connected, but we have had times in the past where the underwater music goes out. You can stay synchronized and try to stay synchronized with the music that's also above water.
wow.
So beats underneath the water, basically, to the count of 8. Okay.
Wow, that's so cool. I love learning little things like that. That's so cool. Well, it must have been a huge transition for you going from training for the Olympics and then going back to school and then later into the workforce. Tell us more about that transition and what impact it had on your emotional, mental, and physical.
Yeah, of course. I was lucky in that I was able to attend a university that had a synchronized swimming team. So I didn't have to defer going to college like many of my teammates did. I could continue training for the Olympics and get that education. So it was a pretty seamless transition for me after the Olympics. I just went right back to school, graduated, got a job, followed that traditional path. Whereas some of my teammates were back at ground zero, applying for universities and starting from scratch after taking a pretty long break. So I didn't have as much of a mental hurdle as I hear some athletes do. I kind of had a short-term plan, but the people who compete and don't have a backup plan when they finish their sport, it is a lot harder and it's challenging. That said, there is a drop-off. You have this camaraderie with your whole team and you're constantly around each other, especially in that year leading up to the Olympics. And then all of a sudden you're on your own, going to school, and me in particular without any of my classmates because they had all graduated. So it's hard no matter what. Even if you have the best laid plan, there's still some transition.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I mean, even from my transition, I remember it just trying to figure out like who I was outside of athletics. And even going into the workforce, you still don't fully know because you're just starting, and figuring out which direction you want to go in. So that's amazing that you had such a seamless transition, especially competing at the highest level. And not many athletes have that. Like even coming out of high school, transitioning, not competing in high school, maybe they didn't make the college teams, like so many athletes that I talk to and know, like it's very difficult for them when they've, gone from being on a team, like, having that set schedule every single day, like knowing almost like what's expected of them, to then not knowing what's expected. And so, kudos to you for being able to transition.
Thank you. You nailed it. I mean, it's really you taking ownership over your life instead of having a coach telling you what to do. And I think a lot of what we talked about earlier about me having that self drive and waking up early and those things were just innate in me. And I think those helped, so that not having somebody yell in your ear telling you what to do, I could kind of do it to myself.
Yeah. And I feel like I didn't have the seamless transition. And to me, it felt like kind of equating to like a child star where everything you've worked for is behind you. So there was this transitional period. And actually we interviewed an athletic transitional athletic life coach, Juan Fernandez, and he helps athletes to transition into regular life. And I think that that's, Erin, you and I talked about that. It's so necessary for so many people. So I want you to tell us a little bit about what you do now, work, family, etc. And then this kind of goes along with what we were talking about. Are you able to find things in your life today, a sense of purpose that is as exciting for you as training for the Olympics?
Really good questions. So after the Olympics, I started working for a tech company in San Francisco. It's kind of what you did in San Francisco. Worked there for almost a decade. And then I think that inner drive and that itch to be my own boss took hold, and I started my own company, co-founded, and did that for a little while. And now I'm on my second startup. And I think the entrepreneur itch, it kind of matches athletics in a way. You know, you have to have that self-drive and be the one who's pushing yourself. So there are some similarities and some overlap there, but it'll never really match the intensity or the camaraderie or the Olympic experience. I mean, there's nothing like it. And I haven't even tried to replicate it. I've done some masters swimming and some group sports and things like that. And it's fun, but it's just totally different. And that's fine. My goal is not to go to the Olympics again. My goal is not to sacrifice everything else in my life. My goal now is to have balance and do the work and do the play and have the family time and enjoy all of it.
That's so great. Yeah, the balance. So finding that sense of purpose for you has been balance. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love that you went into tech. I too went into tech. Actually, not right after I finished my sport, but I went into video games and then transitioned into tech. And you're so right. Like, just even working in tech, not even, being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of, especially if you're working in a startup, there's a lot of similarities to being an athlete, because you have to wear a lot of hats, do a lot of things, manage your time, be kind of a self-starter. So I love that you went into tech after. What was some reasons that you didn't go into coaching? Because you sound like you would have been an incredible coach.
Thank you. It wasn't necessarily a conscious decision. It just wasn't an option right after, and tech was all around me. But also I was really burnt out. I was swimming 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, living and breathing synchronized swimming. And for me, it was exciting to be a typical person, to have a life that was different than what I had had for the previous 13 years, where that's what everyone knew me as. Everyone in high school and college knew me as the synchronized swimmer. I wanted to redefine myself and be a product manager, which is the role I had when I worked at the tech company. And I really took that on and took it seriously. And I loved that I could redefine myself. And my now husband and I used to joke when we were dating that it's like Erin 2.0. And I feel blessed that I had that opportunity.
I love that. Yes, that is so true. And I've heard so many athletes say that, just the burnout after, that they just wanted to step away. And some were even so passionate about their sport that it was almost traumatic to then be a coach, because they're like, I'm trying to work on transitioning, out of it. And it was really hard for them to even step foot back into, in your case, a pool, So thank you so much for sharing that.
Erin and I joked around when she came and visited that, we both were so waterlogged for years that she barely would even put her toe in the water. And if she were to go in the water, and same with me, the water has to be at least 82 degrees, which is warm, or more, and then only in for a little bit. And I don't know about you, Erin, but I barely ever get my hair or my face wet.
I mean, I think it took me a good 10 years after the Olympics to go in a pool. And now it's if I have to.
Oh yeah. Like, you're just so sick of the chlorine, what it does to your skin, your eyes, you need a break. Yeah. So I totally get it. I'm glad that you're getting back in the pool now, though, because I think, it's great for our children and everything. So can you tell us, just totally transitioning. Can you tell us about the most difficult time in your adult life and how your athlete mindset helped you to overcome this hardship?
Sure. I think most people would probably agree that, well, the hardest time for me was definitely those first 2 years of COVID and the uncertainty and not knowing what was going to happen and the fear and thinking that you're going to have everything go back to normal in 2 weeks and then have it be another 2 weeks and then have it be 2 months. And I feel like I was able to get through that maybe differently than other people, because when you're training, you're constantly pushing your body, you're constantly pushing the boundaries beyond what you think you can handle. And that's exactly what COVID was. It was a constant line in the sand that was moving further and further down the road. And so mentally, I think a lot of people snapped, whereas I would say, okay, well, I've made it this far, I can make it a little bit further. And that's how I dealt with it, just applying those skills that I learned way back yonder.
Yeah. And thank you for touching on COVID, because I work with clients who are starting to have some PTSD now from COVID. Just aren't giving themselves the grace of, this was a really hard time. It was a challenging time. And you're comparing the COVID to all of your training. And so it helps us to remember how hard of a time that it was. So thank you for sharing that. And just being able to go, okay, I can just do a little bit more, right? When we're tired and burnt out, to be able to keep going and use that athlete mindset.
Exactly. I'm just happy it ended, and we can
finally
look.
Wood. I'm knocking on wood.
Yes, knock on wood.
Yes, absolutely. I feel the same way. I just think COVID was such a, double-edged sword, because in some ways, working in tech, especially, like, we were going into the office and traffic and all stuff, and then we got a chance to be at home with our kids, so there was good parts about it, and there was just horrendous things about it, and I think I tried to find normalcy within it, like just normalize, things for my kids, like to keep myself, sane during that time. And so I love that, you kind of touched on that. One question that we ask all of our guests, and it's a large part of, the tagline for the show, weekly fuel for your mind, body, and soul. What are some ways that you take care of yourself and fuel yourself back up?
Being so opposed to water, I love to take long walks, anything to avoid the pool. And I really can check out if I'm listening to a good audiobook or some good music. So I can, if I'm on my own and free of any friends or family, then I can and just have that time to myself and check out. But I also love spending time with family, being in nature. Cooking is one of my favorite things. It's kind of meditative, and just taking it slow. Sundays are slow day, and family time day, and just finding time to myself. And like I've mentioned several times, just keeping that balance of work, being an entrepreneur, working so hard during the week, just chilling out and slowing down on the weekends.
Love that. And you mentioned cooking. So I like to cook, but I don't love to cook, partly because I have children who like only want to eat like foods that I don't want to cook. So I'm like, it's not as fun, to cook for them, because they're like, I don't want to eat this, but what do you enjoy cooking?
Oh, everything. I don't know. I have an instant pot, so anything, one meal, one pot. I love. It's just the meditation comes when you're chopping carrots and throwing things in there, and then just walking away and letting it do its thing. But anything really. I'm not really a baker. Mostly stovetop or instant pot, but it's just nice to see something created that you make with your own hands.
Love that. Well, I need to get one of those. As you were walking, and like you said, you're listening to maybe audiobooks, like what are some of like just book recommendations, or maybe podcasts, if you have some, that have maybe helped you along your journey that you can share with our listeners today?
So this is my first time on a podcast. I don't listen to podcasts, so I'm going to be adding this podcast to my.
I love that.
I need to get into that space. It's just something that I think I never got on board with. I'm such an old-fashioned person, but I finally got on the audiobook train. So at least I'm listening to those. And one of the more interesting ones I read or listened to is called Ultra Processed People. It's by a doctor named Chris Van Tulleken, and he just talks about the dangers of ultra processed food and all the chemicals that goes into them. And it's really people say a lot, oh, you should eat healthy food and not eat junk food, but this goes deeper and it's really data driven. So it talks about the science behind the chemicals and the formulations that go into the food, and why exactly scientifically it's bad for you versus just anecdotes of doctors or health specialists telling you to eat better. So I really liked it. It really registered with me and got through to me, because I was even eating things that I thought were healthy that in retrospect, I realized were lumped into this ultra processed category. So anybody looking to improve their food health, I highly recommend reading it or listening to it. He narrates it, and he's a fast talking, witty British guy. So it's a good listen.
Training.
I highly recommend it.
Oh, good. I love that. Now, you talked about mindset. Are there any mindset books that you have read in the past that you thought were pretty good?
That's a good question. I feel like all that kind of stuff I listened to or read when I was swimming and have distanced myself from since then. I don't know. I mean, some of the practices we did were more visualization and just being present in the moment. But that was we had not mental trainers, but whatever the equivalent phrase is for that. But we would have people who would come in and we would all lay down on the floor and they would lead us in a meditation. And that's something we would do on a regular basis. So it was more old school in that I wasn't seeking out podcasts or books, but I've kept those tools with me this whole time.
I love that. Visualization is such a huge thing for athletes. I mean, and really any area, if you can adapt to that. I remember my dad, he would always, I could like hear him now. He'd be like, visualize you running, visualize. And it was, I'm so grateful for that, because it literally allowed me to be able to visualize my race from start to finish. Like I could hear, like you mentioned, kind of humming, the counts, and I could actually tap my race because I could hear my feet, running from the visualization. I could hear the crowd, which I would never be able to fully hear them, but it would just sound like, like just a loud noise. So I love that you mentioned that. I still use it to this day.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I try to tell people about now as a former athlete, because I don't think it's very common in non-athletes, and it's so common in athletes. I mean, it's drilled into us to visualize yourself winning, visualize your routine, visualize everything that could happen. And it's so applicable to everything in life that everyone should be doing it.
Yeah. And my dad did the same thing. He'd ask me to visualize my races or my games. And I always thought it was so weird or hippy dippy as a kid. And now as an adult, I visualize everything that I do. And our mind scientifically does not know the difference between visualizing doing something and actually doing it. So it enhances the performance tremendously. And yeah, I wish I didn't give my parents so much pushback about their hippie ways. So thank you for bringing up visualization and mindfulness and that sort of thing. So what is next for you, Erin? What are some of your current personal and or professional goals for yourself?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I'm definitely loving being my own boss versus working for a big corporation. So I don't think I'll ever go back to that. But I'm also happy living year to year and just taking what comes my way and being hippy dippy. I'm just learning to roll with the punches, and that's been a big departure for me from the plan of going to Stanford and going to the Olympics and having everything kind of mapped out for myself. And I think it's a good practice for me to be a little bit more flexible and have my goal really just to be balanced with friends, family, spend the time to do the things that I missed when I was training, which I may not have even noticed at the time, and just have time for myself.
Thank you so much, Erin. And please tell your family hello for me and come visit soon.
I definitely will. Thank you both.
Yeah, Erin, this was just an awesome conversation. And I learned so much that I didn't know about synchronized swimming. So thank you so much for sharing. And I do have one takeaway for the audience. I would love for you, Erin mentioned, getting into nature, taking walks, listening to audiobooks. What are some ways that you guys fuel up your soul? Put it in the comments below. And everyone have a wonderful Sunday. Thank you.